Welcome to today's webinar, How to Configuration Management for Macs in the Enterprise. My name is Nick Thompson and I will be your host today. Let's take a look at our agenda. First of all, we're going to do a brief overview of Jamp just to make sure everyone's familiar with who we are and what our products do. Then we're going to dive into really the heart of configuration management, which is how to deploy Macs in the first place. Then what configurations are even available for the Mac OS operating system here. And then we will talk about how to leverage those configurations in a security mindset, because that's usually what's the most important thing when configuring Macs. We'll discuss some next steps, and then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So, our first topic here, an overview of Jamp. If you're not familiar with us, right, our mission is to help organizations succeed with Apple. And we've been doing this for a while now. We've been around since 2002, and all we do is make products that allow IT to manage Apple devices, Mac, iPhone, iPad, Apple TV. And we do that with our two products called Jamp Now and Jamp Pro. Jamp Now is really our simple mobile device management solution, and it really doesn't need any IT at all, no IT required, versus Jamp Pro, which is more geared for IT professionals. Diving a little bit deeper here, again, Now is all about easy device setup, simple management, security without that complexity, versus Pro lets you go through the entire lifecycle management of managing Apple devices, from deploying them, configuring them, which we'll be spending a lot of our talk on today there, getting apps to the devices, getting inventory data back, making sure they are secure, and providing a way for users to get apps. This is what the products look like. They're all just web-based, so there's a server that's in the cloud that you connect to. And on the Pro side of things, we even have an on-premise server too. Now, for those keeping track at home, we used to call these products two different things. We recently did a rebrand. Jamp Now used to be called Bushel, and Jamp Pro used to be called Casper Suite. We rebranded that back in October, and now it's called Jamp Now and Jamp Pro. So that's a brief overview of who we are and what our products are. Let's dive in now to some new ways to deploy Macs. So this is really the first step, because you need to get the Macs into the hands of your users before you can actually do all this configuration stuff, right? And so what does this look like in the past? Well, historically, it's been imaging. It has really historically been the only way to deploy Macs. And frankly, there's a lot of tools out there to let you do imaging. There's some native tools. That's the icon that I have on there on the left, the System Image Utility. And there's a bunch of third-party tools, including one from us, that let you build your own images. And, that's great, but sometimes building those images are really cumbersome. They take a long time. You have to manage various OS build numbers, and you have to put on all the different packages that you'd like on top of your base image. Then, if you've ever ordered new Macs right away, right when they come out, you usually find out that the operating system that shipped on those new Macs has a slightly newer build number than what you were imaging with, making them incompatible. So you have a bit of a headache there. And frankly, images just become out of date really quick. Software is updated quickly. Apple's always putting out new versions of their operating system, and it can become a pain to always keep that up to date. That's why we believe imaging is fading away. In fact, there's some changes coming to the file system soon that could potentially change imaging forever too. So, what's replacing imaging? Well, we believe that there is a better way here. And this is actually how we hand out Macs to new employees here at Jamp. 3 simple steps. First, open up the box. Second, power it on. And third, there is really no step 3. So let's follow these steps, if you will. We're going to open it up, and we're going to boot up our Mac here for the very first time. Here we are on our boot up screen. And we now enter our familiar setup assistant. I just simply select my country, and then I select my language that I would like to use. Next, I need to connect it to a Wi-Fi network. Now, this doesn't have to be your corporate secure network here. This could be any open Wi-Fi network. It just needs to be able to talk back to Apple, to their activation servers, in order to get the configuration that we've set up for it ahead of time. So I join this Wi-Fi network, I connect, and now I get this screen. It says, this Mac will be configured automatically by, and then you can insert your company name here. So this is really where the magic is happening. And this is all thanks to a technology called Device Enrollment Program, or DEP, which we'll talk about in a few minutes here. But just know that this screen can't be skipped, and configuration will be applied automatically. Now, what's nice, too, is I can even require authentication here. So if I'm worried about a Mac ending up in the wrong hands of somebody and having it be auto-configured, well, I can require LDAP authentication at this point. And so that could be your Active Directory server or any other LDAP service that you happen to use. Next, I need to create my account on my Mac. And you, as IT, have a lot of different controls of what you can do right here. You can have this account either be a local full administrator, or you could have them just be a local standard account so they don't have any admin privileges. Or you could skip this altogether if you like to have your home accounts live on your directory server too. So you can skip this altogether if you wanted to. Next, you'll notice it skipped a whole bunch of other setup screens for me. It skipped the Apple ID screen. It skipped the terms and conditions screen, because that's all able to be configured with Jamf and DEP. So now, here we are right at our home screen, and the first thing that happens is I get a notification. Let's zoom in on it. So what happens here? It says, installing software and security settings. Check out SelfService for more resources, love IT. So what is really happening here? Well, there's three things, and there's three acronyms that we're going to dive into. First is that DEP. So the Mac was wirelessly provisioned using Jamf thanks to DEP. This next thing, installing software. This was thanks to another Apple technology called VPP. And installing security settings, this is thanks to a framework called MDM. We're going to tear apart these three acronyms so that we can understand how to best configure Macs. Let's start with MDM. And MDM is just called Mobile Device Management. And frankly, it is Apple's built-in management framework into all of their operating systems. So it's a sort of a set of configurations that are available for you to configure. These are delivered to your devices over the air thanks to Apple's push notification service, which maintains a constant connection to your devices so you don't have to. So that means you don't have to worry about if your Macs are changing IP address or anything like that. It's all handled in the background thanks to Apple. Now, how do you do these things? Well, they're profiles, and these profiles just simply define all these settings inside of the operating system. It's sort of like a recipe for your device. And if you're familiar with Windows management, it's very similar to a group policy. So it's very, very much so like GPO. So that is Mobile Device Management, or MDM. The next acronym that we saw here was Apple's Device Enrollment Program, or DEP. And that's what we experience by booting up that Mac for the first time and having it be auto-provisioned for us. Another term for this is called zero-touch deployment, because IT didn't have to touch that device at all. It simply was given directly to the end user, booted up for the first time, and automatically configured. How does this work? Well, you have to order your devices from Apple or from a reseller that supports DEP. And in doing so, they tie your serial numbers to your company ID, to your company record that you have with Apple. Those serial numbers then talk to Apple's activation server during setup, and they get automatically enrolled. One nice thing, too, is if you have older Macs and you've been buying them from Apple or from a reseller, you can tie purchases dating back to March 1st, 2011 into DEP. So DEP is really the best way of getting Macs provisioned here for you. Now, we understand that not all Macs are DEP compatible, so because you might have purchased them elsewhere, or they're older than March 1st, 2011, or you didn't set up an account with Apple. So to do that, you would rely on some older imaging workflows or user-based enrollment, where you simply visit a website and download a package file to enroll your Mac, and you still get all the same functionality that we'll be looking at here in the future. The third acronym that I want to define here is VPP, Apple's Volume Purchase Program. And this is just a way to purchase and license apps in an online portal. And you can distribute those apps as well, too. You can distribute them either as a personal app, so tied to someone's Apple ID, or you can make it device-based. And if you do it device-based, that means it's independent of an Apple ID altogether. So those are the three programs, right? MDM, the framework. You've got DEP for deploying Macs and VPP for deploying software. Now, if you're a school, I want to make another side note here. If you're a school, Apple has another program called Apple School Manager, which is really just combining these two programs into one, plus some other classroom tools. All right, so let's go back to our Mac. We've provisioned it, we are installing software, and we're doing some configurations thanks to MDM. So now I'm going to open up System Preferences here, and this is what happened in the background. I applied this MDM profile to my Mac. But there's a couple of other things here. What are these? Well, these are those configurations. And they are configurations that you can build and deploy via the MDM framework. So what configurations are available for macOS? Well, again, this all relies on MDM, and it's thanks to profiles. Or really the correct term is called a configuration profile, and it's just a little XML file that you build using Jamp. And these are the different payloads that you can build in order to configure your Macs the way that you would like to have them. I've kind of categorized them for you that makes sense. So you've got some basic profiles, right, like a passcode policy. You've got a restriction payload so that you can restrict various things, including consumer features on the Mac. You've got a network payload, so you can tell it which Wi-Fi networks to join and whether or not to only work on Ethernet, right? You've got a VPN payload so that you can configure VPN settings directly for your users. You can set up printers. You've got all different things related to various accounts that you might want your users to have on their Mac, such as a mail account or an LDAP account. Or if you happen to use Microsoft Exchange, you can configure that for your users as well, too. Going into some of the more advanced security payloads, you can deploy certificates down to your Macs. You can configure how basically everything inside of that security and privacy preference pane is handled. So that means turning on File Vault or making sure that users only get apps from the App Store. And you can do some parental controls and mobility settings too if you're doing mobile home accounts. In advance, you can configure how the dock behaves and how Finder behaves. So these are really all of the different values or payloads that you can build to configure your Mac to work for you in the way that is most appropriate for your organization. And you don't have to do just one giant profile. You can lay down multiple small profiles to devices, and you can continue to update these things down the road too. Maybe you change your Wi-Fi password for your network and you want to update that to everybody. So these are the configurations that are available for the Mac. There's also MDM commands. So these are commands that you can send to a Mac if you need to lock it or remove the MDM profile, remove it from management, or wipe it altogether in case it's lost. So MDM is really good for the Mac, but a lot of organizations need more. They need some of these more advanced things, which is why we also have an agent that gets installed on the Mac. We call this the Jamp Agent, and it's really just a binary, and it gets automatically installed after you enroll your device. And in addition to the binary, it also adds a hidden admin account. Why do we add a hidden admin account here? Well, it's because that gives you root access to the Mac, so remote root access. That's really important. That means you have full admin rights over your machines, even though your local users wouldn't have admin rights. And that allows you to execute just about anything remotely, from scripts, software, executing various policies, and so much more. These are some examples of the different payloads, if you will, that are associated with the Jamp agent. So notice these go beyond just those configurations that we saw in the previous slide. You can install PKG files, DMG files. You can enforce file vault and actually take those encryption keys and then store them back into the Jamp server. So if you ever need to decrypt a Mac, they're all in one central location. You can bind your Macs to your directory service if you use that. You can run scripts. So if you can't find something in here that you want to change on your Macs, but you know the terminal command to do it, you can just make that into a script. And that really opens up the possibilities for things that you can do. You customize the dock, set the firmware password, install printer drivers, modify local administrator accounts. Really, really handy if you want to, say, remove admin rights from your existing Macs out there, or if you want to grant admin rights out there too. We tend to grant admin rights here at Jamp to our users, but we know we're not like every other company out there. And you can set how the software update server behaves too. So really, Jamp offers both MDM plus an agent, the Jamp agent, for total Mac configuration here. So what does this look like in practice? Well, I've got some security examples that I want to show you because we find that security configuration is one of the top things that organizations are always asking about when they say, how do I get my Macs ready for the enterprise? So here we are in a configuration profile, and this is a screenshot from the Jamp server. I've cut out all the extra UI, but this is how you build one of those configuration profiles. You'll notice I'm just in the password profile here, and I'm defining now all of my values that I want my passcode to be, whether I want it to require alphanumeric, how long I want that passcode to be, how many complex characters, when it times out, and how long the Mac will take until it automatically locks. So just by setting a few values here, I've ensured that all my Macs will have a password on there. In fact, if I set this passcode policy, when the Mac boots up for the first time in DEP, it will apply this policy there, which is really nice. Next, I might want to restrict a few things because I don't want my users necessarily poking around at everything. And one of the more common things to restrict are my system preference panes. So in this case, I'm going to disable the users and group pane. I'm also going to disable the App Store pane and the date and time pane because I don't want them changing their local time on their Mac. I want it to always be set by Apple time. Next, I'm gonna restrict some more of the consumer features too, because maybe I don't want I'm in a very secure environment and I don't want users using iCloud on there. Now, in this case, they're all pre-checked, but I could uncheck all of these values if I don't want my users to using iCloud documents or back to my Mac or mail, that sort of thing. I can even turn off the camera on the Mac as well too. And this all is based on what you would like to define as your corporate policy for your devices. Other security settings, I'm going to enforce Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper, if you're not familiar with it, is a built-in mechanism into macOS that determines if an app is malware or not. Really, really handy. And it does that by only allowing apps from various sources. So you can only allow apps from the Mac App Store or the App Store plus identified developers. That will keep it the most secure. Then you can also prevent users from overriding Gatekeeper so that they don't manually install software from an unknown source. And you can do some other things too, such as allowing the user to unlock your Mac with an Apple Watch if you want to allow that. A very secure method of unlocking a Mac, but you could disable that if you want to. And for those who are lucky enough to have the new Macs with the Touch ID, you could enable or disable that feature as well too. File Vault. This is another big thing that companies always want to turn on. File Vault is Apple's built-in native encryption. And it's really, really nice because it's all just on the fly. You really don't see any performance degradation at all on there. So it's a great thing to turn on. And you can have it required by all of your Macs, and you can have those keys stored in one central location. Next, these are some other features that go beyond MDM that rely on that Jamp agent that's on the Mac. So you can do things like restrict apps, restrict actually specific processes. So in this case here, I've told my Jamf server to find and kill the BitTorrent client transmission because I don't want that running on any of my Macs. And so it will automatically kill that if it ever finds that process. It will even delete that app altogether too. A lot of people even restrict Mac OS updates at this point here. So if you didn't want your users going to Sierra, you could actually restrict the Sierra installer. Kind of a nifty way of doing that. And of course, security is all about getting software onto your Macs and keeping that software up to date. And that's where the Jamp Agent plus some other software that comes with Jamf Pro all comes into play here. What we're looking at on the far left here is our Composer app, which is part of Jamf Pro, which lets you take snapshots of a software install, and you can package it up into your own PKG or DMG file, and then you can deploy it to all of your Macs using the Jamp Agent policy. So this is really, really helpful because if you recall back to our previous slides, VPP only does Mac App Store apps. This lets you deploy any software that's out there, such as Microsoft Office or like a VPN agent that needs software running in a user interface, or really anything that is software. So let's go back to our Mac here again. We provisioned it, we deployed software, and we've deployed security settings. But there was something else written in here. It said, check out SelfService for more resources. What is this SelfService? Well, we have an app that comes part of Jamf that lets you as IT populate with anything that you think your users would like. So here's a screenshot of what SelfService looks like. And We see we've populated it with a number of different things. We have a few apps in there. We've got a printer driver in there. We've got a maintenance script in there. We have some ebooks in there. So you as IT get to build this however you would like to build it. And you can even brand it too. So you could kind of put a nice coat of paint over it and have it be your company's self-service. So really, really nice feature that's part of Jamp. So to recap, Jamf Pro lets you really do the full lifecycle management of Macs, from deploying them via zero touch, that's thanks to DEP, device configuration, which we learned about is really MDM plus the Jamp Agent, to getting apps out to your devices, gathering extensive inventory data, security controls, and providing a great way for users to get their own apps on there. Some more technical details here on the back end of Jamf Pro. So the server itself can either be cloud hosted or can run on premise. Cloud hosted is great. We've got data centers in North America and the EU. It's automatic, easy upgrades you don't have to worry about whenever we come out with a new version. And we use AWS as the infrastructure. If you choose to run it on premise, it's a very lightweight server, so you can virtualize it if you want to, and we support Linux, Windows, and Mac OS for the server component, because it's really just a MySQL database talking to a Tomcat server. And you can have multiple distribution points if you are distributing software within your offices. And again, we integrate with all of the Apple programs that are out there, which are things that we covered here earlier in the presentation, from APNS, which basically connects the devices to your server, DEP and VPP, and Apple School Manager if you happen to be a school. Also, we integrate with a lot of the things that you might already have in your environment. So if you have a directory server, we integrate with that. If you're using single sign-on, you can use that too. If you run SCCM, you can actually share inventory data from Jamf into SCCM. If you've got a Cisco network, we support their Cisco ICE and their new Fastlane for mobile devices. We just came out with a ServiceNow plugin, which lets you share inventory data. And if you want to build something on your own, we have a robust API too. So some next steps here. If you're liking what you see and you want to learn more, contact us to get started, right? We've got sales reps across the globe and engineers that would love to talk to you to show you really what this looks like in your specific environment. Check out other webinars too. If you want to dive deeper on some of these topics, there's some really great ones, such as patch management or enforcing encryption, or learning more about the mobile side of things, since we mainly focused on the Macs here today. And lastly, check out Jamf Nation. Jamf Nation is a wonderful community. We have 40,000 members that are part of Jamf Nation. It's a free open community forum where you can find best practices and really connect with other IT admins out there. With that, I want to thank everybody, and that concludes our presentation.